We're live. I think we're live.
All right.
We're live. I think we're live.
That was Ian.
Hello.
Hey, Ian. All right. Yeah. So Chris is going to do the intro this month. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yep. Thanks everybody. If you're new to our group, we are Merge PHP, collection of, gosh, I don't know, I've lost count now, like 10 other user groups across most of the US and Canada. So we'll just do some quick run through of some things. I represent Alena PHP from Atlanta, Georgia. Just kind of a quick bio on each group here with the slides. Founded in 2004. We have my group and the Merge group has a JetBrains license raffle. So it's a 1-year license for any of their tools, which you can add to a current subscription. So the first person who emails me, Chris at atlantaphp.org, I will send you the licensing info. Hopefully we'll get some uptake on that. So next, Boston PHP, founded in 2002. I don't know. I guess Bobby's not here, but Bobby Cahill and Ben Edmonds represent Boston, and they put on a virtual self-study program. Gene Babin, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, Babin or Babin, Babin, I think, is kind of the in charge of that. So if you're interested, and that's open to everyone. So check them out if you're interested in some of their classes and coursework. So next, Austin PHP, Logan and Ian lead that group, also founded in 2002, and they're also responsible for the Longhorn PHP conference, which was, I guess, last month. So if you missed that, check them out next year. I have not been, but I've heard tremendously good things. So take a look at them too. Next. Seattle PHP, Tim Bond represents them. They're founded in 2003. Next. And Tim's also responsible for a lot of our mergephp.com site as well. So we appreciate his hard work on building a static site for us. Also represented PHP Vancouver, James Doyle and Sean Mazes. PHP Vegas as well. Josh Copeland leads the Vegas group. Kansas City PHP, Eric Poe, long-term member with us. He's not here tonight, but another great group that's represented. Utah PHP, Mark Niebergall and Derek Caswell, also early 2000s group. A lot of the older groups in the country are here. I think we're all early 2000s for the most part. So good to see everybody. San Diego PHP. Also represented by John Cogden and Eric Van Johnson, also the new owners of PHP Architect and the people responsible for the PHP Tech Conference, PHP Architect Magazine, all the things with PHP Architects. So definitely take a good look at them as well. And our newest group, I believe, the Portland PHP group, or PDX, PHP PDX, represented by Alena Holligan, who's also our presenter tonight. Some upcoming conferences. These all are 2024 dates. So we've got Laracon EU, PHP UK, Dutch PHP, Laracon India, Tech in April in Chicago, and PHP Day in Verona in May. So lots of good stuff coming up early in the year. Some of our social media things, we're primarily on Mastodon at merge@phpc.social. Also, if you're here, you've probably found our YouTube or seen our YouTube streams. We have our prior meetings recorded and archived there if you want to go back and see earlier presentations. So. We also are always looking for new speakers or either suggestions if there's somebody you'd be interested in hearing, or if you want to present something yourself, definitely get in touch with us. We have the link there you can see, and I know I'm not going to read you the whole link, but check in with one of us if you're interested. and we can get the link to you, or just look at mergephp.com, and we should have all our information posted there. So, okay, that's all our slides. I don't know, is Alena ready for us? I know I've seen her present for a number of years, so I think she'll be, as a great presenter, and I think you'll appreciate what she's got to say tonight.
All right. Give us a second here to switch things over. There we go.
Hello, hello, everyone. Okay, well, welcome tonight. I'm excited. Hopefully, we're going to skip through and get to some specific things that we didn't get to at Longhorn this year. I did a tutorial day at Longhorn PHP this year. Make sure that you're staying updated with conferences coming up, and please join us live, because that is a really great way to get in learning and get your questions and do things yourself. But hopefully in the interim between conferences, we can help you here on the Merge PHP meetup group. So today we're going to be doing browser testing. Hopefully you are all prepared for that, and that's what you're here for. If you're just here to hang out, that's great too. Go ahead and write stuff in the chat. People can join us there. Okay, monitors and streaming. Whew, weird. Okay, so people can help out with that and jump in and ask me questions. It'll be hard for me to catch a chat, but someone will definitely be able to jump in and make sure I see it. So if you have any questions, make sure you pop it into either the PHP user group Slack channel on the Merge PHP Slack channel there and on the PHP user group, or into YouTube chat there as well. Either of those places, you should be able to get questions answered. So to go over what we're doing tonight, we have, first we're going to be doing browser testing. So to do browser testing, we need a project to work on. So we're going to start off with using a Symfony demo project. So if you want to start off yourself, these are the things that you're going to want. Hopefully you already have PHP installed. Here's all the prerequisites we have. So if you don't have PHP installed, you're going to want to do that. Also, having dependency management with Composer, definitely something you're going to want to have installed. And although you don't need it, we're probably not going to get into Docker today. Hopefully we will be getting into Selenium, and the easiest way to run that is with Node. So installing NPM is great, is a great way to do that right now. So this install Selenium standalone will be something great to get started with. We'll do that. I'll be using that later on in the evening. So for our project, like I said, we're going to be using the Symfony demo site, because I want to show how not only can Codeception connect to any website, but you also have specific ways that you can connect to a project, some of the common projects like Symfony, Laravel, all of those things. So we're going to do Symfony. They have a nice little demo project that gives us some great stuff to work with. So this is what I've run so far. Is I've just run my installed the Symfony project. Yes, I actually have all the code ready. So if something doesn't work, all of the code we're doing, I already have it set up and running. But I want to start from scratch because I want to show you any gotchas there are and some of the weirdness on how this might look when you set it up. So I think that's most helpful, and it really doesn't take much to get up and running. And so I want to show you how easy it is. So the only thing that I have currently done on this was ran the install for the demo project. I did my, here it is, my Composer Create project from the Symfony demo, and I just left it named My Project. Then that is really all, and I've pulled it up in PHP Storm here. Okay. I know how to blow it up here, but I'm not quite sure about some of these other ones. So I might have to switch back to the terminal over here, because this one I can make bigger for you. Okay. And I know how to make the code once we get into the code. But for now, if you're following along, that's all we've done so far is we've installed this Composer Create Project Symfony demo. Okay, so the big thing that we're going to do tonight is we're going to install Codeception, because Codeception lets us do browser testing. If you go to Codeception's website, they actually have fairly good documentation. A couple weirdnesses that my biggest annoyance is with sometimes they'll show you they write it in different ways on how to run it. So capitals versus lowercase really are important when you run it command line. And so that's probably the biggest gotcha there is in here. So out of their documentation, that's one of the biggest gotchas. And if that's the biggest gotcha, then we can work with that. So if you're right here on the Codeception website, we go to Quick Start, and you can see that we can do a quick install with Composer. You can also do just a specific package if that's what you want. Like, for example, there are multiple ways to do browser testing or acceptance testing. So really, Codeception is an acceptance test. Is a full package tester. It will do acceptance testing, functional testing, unit testing, which is just a wrapper over PHP unit. It'll do API testing, all of those things. We're going to concentrate on the browser testing tonight. But to start off with, I want you to understand that there are two ways to do this. You can either test in the browser with just a simple request response, and you can use PHP browser for that, which is a simple browser, but it doesn't have JavaScript. And then if you want to be able to test JavaScript, you're going to need to use Selenium. So those are the two browser testings we can do. Now, the problem with using Selenium all the time is that Selenium is a lot slower. PHP browser is very fast. Selenium, not so fast. Just imagine you having to go everywhere and browse and click all of the buttons yourself. That's essentially what Selenium does. It goes and waits for the page to load and clicks all the buttons there are, and it has to do all of those things that you would have to do as a user, which is great because then you know it works like your user is going to do it. However, it is slow. PHP browser, on the other hand, is just a simple request response that does not really wait for, it doesn't need to wait for rendering of any sort. So it's a very quick, do I see this? Do I not? There's no waiting, which is the big difference when you're writing tests for PHP browser versus Selenium. There's no waiting in PHP browser because it's just a simple request response. Which brings us to another fantastic thing that we can use with Codeception, which is just testing your project itself, which is typically what we call functional testing. And you can test just the framework, and you can hit the framework without actually even having your a server running at all, because it's just hitting code much like your unit tests are doing. So your unit tests are you just tie them into your code. It hits your code without having to actually run a PHP server. Functional tests will work the same way. If you tie them into a framework, like in this case, we'll be tying them into Symfony, and then you can do your testing all offline, really, off a website at all, because it's just connecting to your framework. So you don't even have to have anything. It's just connecting to your framework. So PHP browser, you do actually have to have PHP running. The a PHP server running. Sorry, I did say that wrong. When you're tying it into the framework, you don't need to have any sort of PHP server running at all, because it's just tying right into the framework, just like you would with PHP unit. When you're running your unit tests, you don't actually run that it doesn't have to be run on a server. You don't have to have your website served up anywhere. It runs it in the code. And that's what it does when it ties into the framework versus tying it into a browser. So you can set up all of those things individually if you know what you're wanting to set up, or you at least know, I just want to do this portion of it. But we're just going to do a real simple install, which is just this very top one here. So like I said, I'm going to go through this step by step with you to show you any little gotchas that you'll see and make sure that you can step through with me. But if you're interested in any of the code, I put it in the PHP user group Slack, or in the Merge PHP group. You can see it's on GitHub, Sketchings, Symfony, Codeception demo. So you can go here. This is actually the code we're going to write. So I have it all written for us, but we're going to start from scratch for this demonstration purpose. But you're welcome to go here and grab anything you need. And I also shared the gist of the project outline. This is what we're going to be doing. So let's get started with installing Codeception. So from the Codeception website, you can do this on any project that you have Composer running on, which should be all of your projects, because Composer is fantastic and makes it really easy to work with different projects in your project. So we are within cd into my project. There we go. We're within my project, and we're just going to run our Composer require. So it's going to install Codeception for us. And then you're also going to see here, once it's done, some files have been created or updated to configure your new package. Please review, edit, or commit them. These files are yours. So these are the files that it's created for you. Now, something to note, these files are a little different depending on what project you're running this in. If you're running it in a framework, it's already set things up for you. So your functional suite here is already going to be set up to tie into, in our case, Symfony, because we did this in the Symfony app. So it could look a little different what files are set up for you depending on where you installed this. So that's your first strangeness, a little bit of funky stuff that goes on and could be confusing if you don't know to expect it. So our global configuration, it tells us here, is the codeception.yaml file. Codeception typically uses YAML files for its configs. And then in your tests folder, you have a unit suite, a functional suite, and an acceptance suite. So we have, again, YAML files with our configs. It also tells us Codeception was installed for acceptance, functional, and unit testing. Next steps, edit the test acceptance.suite.yaml to set the URL of your application. Change PHP browser to the WebDriver to enable browser testing. So if you want to set this up for Selenium or something else, then we would change it. We can leave it at PHP browser if we don't need to test any rendering. We just need the request response of HTML. And then you can edit the functional suite to enable doctrine model if you want it. So connecting to the database, which the project that we installed has a SQLite database. So we can connect to our SQLite database, and then we can create our first acceptance test using this line right here. So the first thing I want you to note is the capital here, lowercase, and here it's got capitals. So let's go into our code and start with step number 1. We're just going to we want to run an acceptance test, very simple acceptance test right off the bat. So let's get that set up. So it said that in our test folder, we have in our acceptance tests, in our folder, there is in our test, there's an acceptance.suite.yaml and an acceptance folder. So in the acceptance.suite.yaml, that is not in your acceptance folder, you'll see here. So zoom in so you can see this. That is our so we're going to serve up our, I'm going to create it. Oops. Let me grab another one. I am just going to serve our site, my project. There we go. So from here, I'm going to use the PHP server just to serve up our PHP site. You can do it in a couple ways. Like I said, our project we're going to be using is here. This is what we installed. And we can do Symfony Serve as well. So since we're using that project, you can run it either way. We can have a Symfony Serve, or we can do the PHP browser. Either one would work fine. All this is setting up our server so our website can be accessed through the browser. So now we go to, here's our sample Symfony demo application. So that is all that we needed to do. We served it. We're ready. We can browse our blog posts, or we can go into the back end, log in, and do stuff here. It'll tell you right here your users that you can use. But this is our project. So it's localhost 8000. If we go back to our code, that was what it was set up to begin with, was localhost 8000. So that is all good. So if we go back here to our command line where we installed Codeception to begin with, it's saying your next step is to create your first acceptance test. And we do that here. So I'm going to copy this line and paste it here. Okay, this is the first gotcha. And this is one of the things that, like I said, the biggest annoyance, this one thing here. Did you catch what I said, capital letters earlier? Notice that here was lowercase. Here it told us to use capital letters. This folder is lowercase, have to use lowercase. So any of the commands it tells us to run, we need to run with the lowercase for our suites. So this is lowercase acceptance suite. So all I do is change this from capital letter to a lowercase letter. Whoops. And now my test was created. So right off the bat, that's one of the biggest things getting set up with Codeception. You're like, oh, I get to the very first thing and it doesn't run for me. And why not? It's just a capital letter thing. And you'll find a little bit of that in their documentation on whether it's uppercase, lowercase, how it's done. A lot of this is where you, again, it sets it up a little different depending on which project it's installed in, because you can have that set. And so part of that, I think, is because of the demo site we have that we're using. So take it with a grain of salt. That really is the one biggest struggle to get through any of the things we're doing today. That's the biggest thing right off the bat. If you didn't have any instruction from me, there's my biggest tip. Hey, you just need to change to lowercase. So the rest of it actually should go pretty easily. So if we see here, again, here was step this configuration file was already created. And then we created our first test. And now it told us to configure, which we looked, it was already configured. And now we're ready to test our basic test. So this is where we're going to go, except for lowercase. So from here, we go into our acceptance first test. So this is the framework that it sets up for you for each test, but we don't actually need these. If you go here, this is actually all we're going to write. So we can actually we're going to copy this right from their code. Oops, and we're going to paste it in here. We don't need any of the rest of these things right now. We'll get a little bit into the before, try to test. But all we're doing is we're creating one test here. So we've passed in the acceptance tester, and we've named that an I. So this makes our writing our test very conversational. So I am on page / that's the home page. I see home. Well, is that what I'm actually supposed to see on my home page? What's something I want to see here? Welcome to the Symfony application demo. I see. Welcome to the Symfony. Okay. Now, again, what's our next steps that it says? Now it says, hey, we're ready to run. Okay, great. We have this line of code. We're gonna go in there. We're gonna type it here and run. Okay, next. Now, all the other things we're going to run into really just have to do with read the error that it says in here, which are mostly we have to install certain packages. Because we're using the PHP browser, and it didn't expect that you had to use the PHP browser, it did not install that package. So to use the PHP browser, we just need to use this line, composer require, and that module. Oops, wrong. So I'm again, copy that line, paste it here, right from their code, and it's going to install that for us. Done. Now we're going to go to run our steps again. Oh, and it's saying, oh, we also need the Symfony package. Okay. So I'm going to do that. Same thing, copy, paste. So this is what I said, why I want to start from scratch, because I want you to see it's not hard. Nothing I'm doing is hard. But if you've never done this before, that could completely throw you off and you're like, oh, nope, not for me. Not going to do it. Too hard. We went through that pretty fast. It really doesn't take much. We just have to listen and go. Got another one, got an assert. Once these are installed, we won't have to do them again until we install like our database. Once we hook it up to the database, then it's going to ask us to install the module for the database. But to be expected. Let's see. Whew! We got through all of our installs, and now we have a working test. Great. We have our very first working acceptance test. Now this acceptance test, remember, if you remember, I said we can run either with the PHP browser or we can run it with Selenium. The PHP browser gives us just the HTML that's output by PHP, and it's not going to render any JavaScript for us. So that's where you really need to be careful. So we are just doing a simple site. We don't need any JavaScript rendered on our site. So we can just use PHP browser for this. But a lot of times, and for most of the sites you're going to be wanting to test, there are going to be many pages or instances where you want to be able to use, you'll need to wait and test, wait for things to load and actually test with JavaScript. Because I don't know about you, but I don't really write projects that don't have any JavaScript. So it is an important thing to do. And so that is one thing that we are really going to make sure that we show today that I didn't necessarily get to in my tutorial. So hopefully if there was anybody here for my tutorial, you'll actually still get something out of this, because I would really like to get into showing you Selenium. So we got our first step. There's our run. Yay, it worked. Okay, next it says, great, read the Codeception guides here. Great, here's our getting started guide. These, like I said, the Codeception documentation is actually really great. Just make sure that if your suites are set up as lowercase, you're actually using that lowercase, because it can't find it. It can't find an uppercase suite that is actually lowercase on your machine. So, important thing to note if you're going through the documentation. But we just did acceptance testing here. We did a sample scenario. They're going to give you some more things. Here's a little bit more detailed about PHP browser versus WebDriver, which I did say was Selenium. So WebDriver, Selenium is the browser itself. Your web is the Selenium is the tool that runs your browser. So it's like your mouse that is making the clicks in your keyboard that's typing things. And WebDriver is what connects your code to that. So there's actually 3 parts when you're running Selenium that gets it more complicated than just running through a PHP browser. But we'll get that set up so you can see that it's not too difficult. Again, we're just adding complexity because now we have different layers on there. So our PHP browser, we already had our URL, was set up there. We did our first test. Great. Our test is working here. These are just giving you some other things that you can do. You can fill fields. You can do selecting options. You can click update. We'll run a few different tests for things in a little bit. I just want to show you some of what you have here. And then you can do some conditional assertions too. Like, I don't just do something. It's not I am on page, or I can, or I click this. Maybe I can see a checkbox is checked, or I can see in field, so that if something should already be filled in, like we have those assertions too. So there's a lot that you can do. But again, there are these step decorators that you might need if you're trying to set up certain things like conditional assertions. So just like we went through and added more modules as we tried to run our test suite, if we try to run it and it's not set up, it's going to ask you to set it up. So the way we would do that is just in our acceptance suite, we'd add this line, just like it tells you here. And then it will ask you to install any modules it needs for that. Okay, that was just a sample. Now we get to the WebDriver. I'm going to blow this up a little bit more. Realize you probably can't read it. Read what I'm looking at. Great. Yeah. Okay. Just checking to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so we're going to jump into a bunch of things, but tonight I really want to make sure that we get into Selenium. So this is the next thing that we're going to do here, is we're going to jump into Selenium. So this was just down on the page. WebDriver is the name of the protocol to drive browsers automatically. So Codeception uses the PHP WebDriver as the PHP implementation for that, so that we can get our code to actually drive the browser. So WebDriver is the package essentially that does that for us. And then Selenium is essentially a mock server for mock browser. We can set up actual browser testing locally, and we can test different Firefox versus Chrome as well. but let's step through and see what this looks like for setting up Selenium. So if you have not done, this is a one-time thing. If you don't have Selenium installed, npm install Selenium standalone. I've already done this. And then Selenium standalone install. And then in a separate server, just like here, we have our browser running, our PHP server running. To have a browser running, we need to actually start Selenium. So we'd need another there we go. Okay, and if you'll notice here, just like with the PHP server, it was running on the local host 8000, and this one is the local 192.168.12.184, and then port 4444. That's the standard port. It should be for you, but if not, for whatever reason, that's where you'll see it, right there as you start. Okay. There are other ways to run Selenium. This is by far the easiest. The Selenium standalone is by far the easiest way to run Selenium and for browser testing. However, Docker works really well for this, especially if you need to put this into your CI pipeline or something like that. You can definitely use Docker for these types of things. There's a Selenium Docker port as well, so totally can do this. This is by far the easiest way, and the only difference is this initial setup, but it's everything that we're going to do code-wise will work the same. Okay, so to get this set up, we actually need to change our acceptance suite. So this is what it's going to ask us to put in. So if we go back here, and the first file we opened was our acceptance suite. And in the acceptance suite, we saw that the PHP browser was what was installed to use. It was using the PHP browser, and the PHP browser needed this URL. So if we look back here, enabled the web driver, it has a URL, and it also says browser is Chrome. So I'm actually going to do this. And uh-oh. There we go. There we go. Oops. There. Okay. So we kept our URL is still the same because our website is still running on that localhost server. And now we're telling it the browser is Chrome. Selenium. This is telling Selenium to act like a Chrome browser. We can also set up Firefox and things too. So we have that set up. And now it's going to say, now we can do, now if we try to run our suite again, so let's go in here, go back to our test, running our acceptance. And now it's going to say, again, see, we used the WebDriver now instead of using PHP browser. So it's going to say, hey, module WebDriver is not installed. Use Composer to install. Great. We can do that. Again, really easy to go through this step. Okay, now that we installed it, let's see what it does now. Oh, no, wrong one. I already installed that one. Didn't go up far enough. Now we want to actually run Codeception, run steps. Okay. Woo! That took a lot longer than it did with the PHP browser. And if you noticed, it popped up a quick look at the browser for us, because that's what it's actually going to open it and run. We can tell it to do that in the background and not actually open something visually for us to see. but we'll get into a couple of steps there. But that was essentially the same thing. We didn't have to change anything in our code because pretty much moving from PHP browser to Selenium, there's no to the WebDriver. There's no real problems. The only thing you might find is that you might actually have to wait for something to load. But if you've done it in the PHP browser, it should be something that's already loaded fast and you won't worry about that. Now, going backwards, if you have tests that were set up in using the WebDriver and you try to go back to the PHP browser, there are some functions or models. There are some methods that you can't actually use on the PHP browser because, like I said, the PHP browser is just request response. There's no waiting for anything because nothing renders like JavaScript. It's just when I request that, what HTML does the server send back? So the server sends back HTML to the browser. It doesn't send back PHP code. So that much rendering is done. But the browser rendering is not done when you use PHP browser. So you've only got the raw HTML. So it's a very fast transition, but you're also not getting any of the, so you don't have any of the waits. You're not waiting for JavaScript or anything else to load on the page. So those are the big differences when you're changing your tests. Mostly the tests are the same, whether you're using the PHP browser or you're using the WebDriver. Okay, so like I said, waits are one of the big things. You might need to wait until an element is available before you click the agree button. And whatever is taking to actually render that button may not be available for you to click yet. And so waiting for an element is something that will often be done when you're using the WebDriver. You can also add a wait here if you're not waiting for an element, but you know I need to wait so long. If something isn't there when it should be, try adding a wait. You want to try to avoid these when you can and wait for a specific element because this will actually wait 3 seconds, even if it only took 1 second for an element to load. Whereas wait for the element is going to wait for that element up to, in this case, it's giving us the 30 seconds, which is, you can have a default and you don't actually ever have to write a number here. But it'll wait for that element. So if it only take 1 second, done, it moves on with 1 second. So it doesn't have to wait for the entire 3 seconds or the entire 30 seconds. It waits for that element. So again, here are some of the smart waits you can enable in the WebDriver, a number of seconds to wait, for example, for things. So it'll say you can wait up to 5 seconds instead of adding a specific wait for you. Okay, another thing is the retry. So if you know that there's something that is a little bit of flaky, like it says, you might retry the click and then it will try that for you. You can set up your retry, how often, how many times, that type of thing. So that again is a step decorator is retry. So I'm gonna show you one of these just so you see what it looks like to install, because again, that's one of the things that I want to make sure you're comfortable with is what is this going to look like. So in my acceptance suite, it's saying we want a step decorator. So we go back to my acceptance suites and our step decorators. My modules, I think it's in, did I put it in here? Let me double check. Our tests. That is not the right one. Huh. That's not my test. Tests. Acceptance. Did I add it here? No. This gave us the weight, and this gave us the Chrome options, no sandbox, headless here. Extensions, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just up with this recorder. Okay, we'll do those in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. I thought it was, nope. Did I not copy it all now? Let me see, messed it up. Step decorator, go here. I think. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to add a retry. So retry to click. We're going to click on this, browse application. So copy this line. We're going to go back in here to our test. I see this, and then I'm going to click retry and say browse application. Okay, now it says click browse application. It couldn't find the browse application for one thing. Let me see. I don't think that. There we go. Again, case. That one is case sensitive. Some of the things are case sensitive, some of them are not. So it couldn't find the browse application because in my head I knew it was lowercase, but I still wrote uppercase browse application. So we clicked browse application and we had our retry here. If it couldn't get it, it would retry, but it didn't need to. Okay, so the next things that we're going to set up here are a few things about our WebDriver that are nice to have and you're probably going to want to do. So first off, we have this wait. This is the smart wait, so it'll wait up to 3 seconds, just in general if it hasn't loaded. And then these capabilities, I don't need it flashing, my screen flashing up with the browser too quick to see. What I do want to see is when I have issues, I want to see screen captures of the issues. So this extension, the recorder, lets us record. It goes through and records all of the screen captures of what it's doing, and it'll save them. This tells it to delete successful. So if that test ran successfully, it deletes all of the files associated with that, which is typically what you want because you don't want every test to have a folder every time you run it. So, but I do want to see any failed tests. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to add these to my acceptance suite. So we've enabled extensions, enabled our recorder, and delete orphan true, delete successful true. Automatic cleanup stuff that we'd like. And then I'm also going to add our capabilities here. Oops, I forgot the wait 3 seconds. Let's do that too. There we go. Okay, our capabilities, they're Chrome options, no sandbox. We're doing this headless, and disable DevSham usage. So some things to use. The headless is the important one that's going to not flash it for us, but it is going to, it will record it because now we've set up the recorder. So first thing, I want to see how it records. So I want to look for something that is not available. So I'm going to look to see. Alena. Is my name on this page? Should not be. So we should get an error. So now we're going to run our project again. Codeception run steps. Notice no flash in front of me. And if we look here, we see that it failed on the Alena, and it's showing you here it failed on step C Alena, that failed asserting that on the page, and this is the page that it took us to, and it actually shows us the words on this page. This is what it was looking in, and it doesn't see anything that contains Alena. Here are the words it looked for on the page, and none of those words contained Alena. So it failed, which is what we wanted. Okay, but we want to see support output. There we go. So it's hard to see this here, and I don't know how to blow up the sides. Let me pull over my Finder window. So you can. So if we go to not here, we want to go to local sites, my project, and then we want to go into tests, output, and there we go. Okay, so, okay. So if you see here, now there's this record. Now if I go in here, I'm just going to do my space bar to see. Oops. We started off here. We went here. We clicked. Remember how we clicked browse application? Took us to this page. And then that's where it failed. We're on this page. So now we can see, well, yes, on this page, I'm looking around. I don't see anything that says Alena. That's why it failed. Very clear. Okay, so I'm going to delete this one. So we can run this again, but I don't want it to fail. So we're going to go back here first and delete this line. And now we're going to run it again. And no failures. And if we go back to our folder, there's no new folder that was named with a timestamp on there of when it happened, because it automatically deleted any tests that passed. So now we have it set up that we've told our acceptance test to use the WebDriver. We've told our WebDriver that we don't want it, that we want to run it headless, so we don't have to actually have it popping up. We have our wait 3 seconds by default if we need to. And then so that we can actually track down what our errors are if we do get a problem, we do want a recording of what happened. So it's saying take a picture at each step in the process and put it in a folder. But then it says delete anything that's orphaned and delete unsuccessful. So if my test passed, delete that folder with all of its imaged steps that is associated with that drive. So let's look at that one more time. I want to see what those look like. We have our failure. We go into our test. You'll see this is randomly generated number. It's got our file first test and then front page works. That was the name of the test. So our file first test, the name of the test, front page works. And then down here, I like to go through just like this, but you can actually open the HTML and you'll see more what those steps were. Here's my recorded test. So here's the picture and it says that I am on page / So on the home page, we see this. I see, welcome to the Symphony demo application. Great. I clicked on the browse application and I was taken here. Oh, red, I see Alena. That was not on this page, and therefore I have an error. So again, that is what it looks like, and that's how we have it up and running with Selenium. Now, remember, we have a few steps here, so what's working and what's not working can be a bit of a problem. So first off, we had to have Selenium running here. So if we stop Selenium from running and I try to run my tests, it can't find Selenium. It gives me this error, couldn't connect to the server, the port 444, there's our Selenium, it's trying to connect. Couldn't connect to Selenium. That's because Selenium is not running. Okay, so Selenium is running, our web server canceled. Okay, now let's run our test again. Oh, on page, the WebDriver cannot, connection is refused. So this is the failure, connection is refused because my web server is not running. So again, I can do the PHP serve or the Symfony serve with this project to have the server, a PHP server up and running. Now when I run my test, there we go. Now my test works. So remember, we have some of those extra pieces here that it's important to note. Okay, we are 1 hour in, and you have had a chance to, right. That's a good point. So you've had a chance to set this up. Hopefully, if you've been able to run some tests yourself, you've gotten to see how to run it in Selenium, how to see Selenium failures, how to write Selenium failures, so you can go back and see anything that failed and figure out why it failed. I see Alena. Yep, don't see it, so that's why it failed. We've written a simple test. We have multiple suites set up in here. All of the suites are going to work in much the same way. The setup for Symfony was the biggest. I have, as you look here, we have some other things that we can do. But at this point, I really want to make sure that if anybody has specific questions or things that they would like to see, that that you get a chance to ask those questions. And since we are an hour in, I also want to give people a chance to get up and take a break. So we're going to take like 3 minutes for a break. And if you have any questions, please put those in the chat too. And I will make sure that I cover those when we come back in like 3 minutes. So feel free to take a break and welcome back. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes. So for those of you, welcome back. One of the nice things about Codeception is it doesn't have to be even for testing a PHP website. You can use these same tests. It's not actually requiring any code. The functional tests to tie into our framework is obviously dependent on that framework. But besides that, if we're just testing in the browser, or we can test any type of site in the browser using Codeception. I did have a request for showing the API testing, but I don't really have an API set up to test with. We might have to do it. I might have to do another test for that. I might have to set that up and show that. I do want to get in and show some Gherkins, because that's once you're getting into browser testing, it's really helpful to be able to talk to stakeholders in a non-technical, but actually can be turned into technical way. So this can be really helpful with communication. And I want to show how Codeception can get set up to help you with communication in that way, even if you don't use it for anything else. So I will, if people are actually interested in the API testing, I will come back for that, but I don't really have an API set up for the for this demo, and it won't go as smooth, and we won't get to cover as many things today. So I'm going to say no to that, but I will also say I will be happy to come back and do that as a separate presentation to talk about acceptance testing or API testing. There's some other fun things we could do with API. So we might have to do a whole talk on API things. Okay, so since there wasn't anything else and I'm disappointed that I have to say no, not now, but later we will do APIs. But for now, we're going to take a look at our Gherkin's tests. While we're here, I actually do want to show you. I'm going to show you what my end code looks like for all of these steps that we've done, and then so that you will be able to do more later, and you're welcome to play with this code as well. So I don't forget at the end, and it's a good break in between, and we'll jump into be able to look at some Gherkins in here. I want to show you what's going on. So this is the code. You're welcome to take this code all you want, the sketchings.com or github.com/sketching/symphony codeception demo. And in here, we have, of course, you can see in the composer JSON, you'll see any of the Codeception, all the Symfony things that require dev. Most of these are all of our Codeception things. You'll notice we've set up a doctrine. There's doctrine here and a bunch of Symfony things for testing as well. So that's our composer.json. Most of the code and things that we're writing today are going to be living in this tests folder. And from the tests folder, let me see if I can blow this up a little. I'm going to blow this up a little bit more so everybody can see it. Okay, so in our tests folder, our output is where we would see any of those tests that failed once we set up our recorder. Once we set up the recorder, that will any new ones will show here. We didn't commit those, but anything would show up in this output folder. And then our acceptance tests will be here. And as you see here, this one is set up as a manage articles.feature. And we also have some functional tests here, which we have a manage articles as well. Again, I didn't actually get into unit testing for any of this. That's a separate thing, but you can. But right now we're going over acceptance and functional testing. So for our acceptance testing, we've set up this simple scenario that is going to do an admin can delete. Given I'm logged in as an admin can delete an article. And then here are some more managed in the functional. So let's set up the Gherkins first, and then we'll tie into our framework with our functional code. So you can see that those are two completely separate things. I don't want you to get confused with them, but our Gherkins can be written in either one. Notice that these are still the same. Managed articles here, I did a little bit more. I got that set up, the actual add articles set up in our functional tests, but it's the same, exact same way here. So let's set up our, let's set up Gherkins tests. So, BDD, okay. So Gherkins goes with behavior-driven development. This is the idea where we have our acceptance tests. Our acceptance tests say what is acceptable to make sure that my site does what it's supposed to. So acceptance tests aren't very helpful if you're not testing the right thing. And as anyone who has developed for very long knows, one of the biggest challenges is making sure that you get the right requirements from the stakeholders who are asking for whatever web application needs to, whatever thing needs to happen on in your application. What exactly does that mean? And that's what acceptance is really. Our acceptance says, if these things pass, then I have given you what you ask for. So it's really helpful if we can have a way to communicate that a lot better. So behavior-driven development is set to do that, is to give us this language to help us to actually build things that match up with what people want. And so to do that, we have the Gherkins syntax. So, which looks like 3 keywords: given, when, and then. So if you look at this sample test they've given you, the feature, this can be anything you want. This is just kind of the way to spell it out. What are we trying to do? This is your summarizing this feature. And then our scenarios, these are the things where we can start actually saying, what really should happen? What do you mean by that? So we start off with given. Given, in this case, it says, given I have a product with $600 price in my cart, and I have a product with a $1,000 price, when I go to checkout process, then I should see that total number of products is 2, and my order amount is $1,600. So if you'll notice here, we had given, when, and then. There are also some ands. This just makes a second given. And it just makes it a little bit easier to talk in a normal language. You could say, given I have product with $600 price, given I have product with $1,000 price, when I go to the checkout, then I should see, my order amount is. You could use those keywords, and it doesn't really matter, but really, like I said, the whole point of this is to facilitate communication. So, and allows us to flow more easily with what we're doing. So we have given, when, and then. Now, as a programmer, something to note, it doesn't actually matter which keyword are using here. These are all going to tie in the same. You'll see that in just a little bit. So none of those keywords actually matter. You can interchange given, when, then, and. All of those can be interchanged. It doesn't really matter. So, but again, facilitating communication should definitely be trying to make this actually communicate well. So given I have products and I have a second product, when I go to the checkout process, then I should see the total and my order. Then I should see the total number of products and my amount total is 1,600. Okay, so this is how this works. This is how this looks. Now let's see what it actually means to set up. I want to let you know right off the bat, I was hesitant myself to go, why do I need to add these steps? Because these lines just need to match up with another function that I'm just writing anyway. So I'm writing a function that I'm tying to. So this is really just another layer on top of all of the other tests I'm writing. So I was a little hesitant myself to get started. However, once you have these scenarios written, once you get a few in, many of those steps are actually going to be repeatable, especially for the fact that you can use variables, keywords, switch them out, that type of thing. So I want to let you know it's not as bad as you may think if you looked at this and said, why am I writing more code? It does really facilitate communication, and it actually helps you to write code that can be reused more easily. So it can help you write better code, or at least more reusable code, and it doesn't actually have to take a whole lot longer. Okay, so for our features, we need to set up a new feature. So we're going to set up a feature in our acceptance called, we don't have that here at all. So we're not going to call it checkout because we don't have a checkout. We're going to call it, let's see, what did I call it over here? Manage articles. That makes more sense. Manage articles. There we go. Feature was created. Okay, great. Told us to do that. Now it says it's going to generate a template that looks like this. Okay, let's take a look. We go into our acceptance. We now see we have the first test and we have a manage articles. Okay, sure enough, here's our feature and here's our scenario. Okay, so this template can be filled by setting actors and goals. Okay, in order to, what are we trying to do here? And to match up with this, I said in order to maintain our blog as an admin, I need to manage articles. That's the whole point of this test. So I'm going to paste that in because I don't want to type. Not live on camera. I'll misspell everything. Okay, so if you'll notice here, I've moved this background out. This will set this given for each of my scenarios. I'm just going to grab it from my functional manage articles though. Oh, I did that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start here, try to manage articles. Oops, not that scenario. I want my scenario here. Nope, I'm going to do when given, and I'm going to take those out. Okay, so I have a scenario. Admin can add article, and I have another scenario that admin can delete an article. Okay, so given I am logged in as an admin, in PHP Storm, you'll notice that this has is highlighted in the background. That's because it's not actually linking anywhere. Or this won't do anything. It's not tied to a function. It's not tied to a test, so it doesn't know what to do with this. So in our support, okay, and our acceptance tester. Oh, it probably tells us here. Okay, let's go through Codeception. I really want you to be able to do this on your own and not just rely on me. Again, Codeception's website is pretty good for documentation. So we have our test set up. And then if we try to run it, so this is the next step we're going to do. We're going to try to run it. Try run. Okay. Let's do that. So we're going to do this, dry run and manage, see, articles. Oops. Oh, helps if you paste it all. Oh, and dot feature. There we go. Okay. So we tried to run our feature, and it says our first one, the manager articles, admin can add articles. It says, here were my tests, and it says incomplete. There's no step definition for this or that. Okay. And then for this one, same thing, step definition is not there. Okay, great. It also tells you here, run the Gherkin snippet to define missing steps. Great. That's what the website is going to tell us too. So we go here. Here's the full line, Gherkin snippet acceptance. So we go here and we type this in. And now it gave us snippets, which says here are samples of what you might want to use. Here's the function that it'll tie to. And since we don't know what you're trying to do, we're going to throw a new exception here. So this is just going to throw exceptions instead of not having them there. But this didn't actually write it anywhere. This just output it to your terminal here. So what do we do with that? Okay, next, step definitions. Okay, so where does it tell me where I'm going to put that? List all defined steps. No. Just not. When. Context file actors. Okay, it sort of does say, just not very good. Okay, so default context is another actors. So essentially, we're going to go here. I'm going to do it in our support. We can go into our acceptance tester. And we can see that this is where it puts that code. Here are my tie-ins to things. So it's under support and acceptance tester. So we're going to start with that. So we're going to go under support and our acceptance tester. Right now, there's nothing here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in, oops, I didn't copy it. I'm going to go back here to our command line and I'm going to paste our generated snippets. So here are our generated snippets. Copy those and paste it here. Okay, so our pasted snippets. Now we say, let's try running that again, see what happens. Oops. I ran the, hey, give me any snippets. All snippets are defined. Yes, that is not what I wanted to run. Let's go back here. Okay, great. We did a dry run. Everything looks good, that it can find everything. Now I'm going to take the dry run part out and actually do a run. We want to do run. Okay. Now it says, okay, but incomplete, skipped, or useless tests. Okay, that's because all we did was throw exceptions. We haven't actually tested anything. So it's not very useful. So let's go in here and start getting things set up. So first thing we have, I am logged in. So given I am logged in as, there are two ways to write this. I can write this with a variable like this, where it says, oh, this thing here is my user. So if we go into my code, can you see it? Okay, given I am logged in as admin, that's here. Or I can also do it like this, where it's a regular expression, and I can match a lot more. So anything here is also matched. So this user gets passed into I am logged in as that user. And then if the user is admin, I'm going to use this username. If the user is user, I'm going to use this username. And they actually have the same password for my test site. So this was grabbed from my browse the back end. We have the password is kitten. Here are my users. So that is the information that I needed for logging in. And it says to log in, I'm going to go to the login page. I'm going to see secure sign in. I'm going to fill the field username with the username and the password with kitten, because that's the password for both of them for now. This is a test site, not a big deal. You can store these just as you would store anything else. You can store these in environment variables or anything else that you want. This is just, like you said here, a variable. This can pull it from anywhere else you need. This is just normal code. But for the test, just to make it easy, we're either logging as an admin or as a user. For logging in as an admin, we need Jane admin, or username is John user, or the username is John user. So we filled in the username and password, and we click sign in, and then we should be on the blog. And we see the element user. So that's how we know that we logged in. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to actually paste. And there's my not logged in. So I'm going to take this one. And I'm going to paste it in here. I'm changing this. So notice it said admin here. So I actually wanted to change that, because I don't want that to be, I want that to be a variable. I want to be able to use this no matter what user I type in there. Okay, so this is how I log in. And then I need to be able to add an article. Okay, so to add an article, I haven't done this one yet, so I don't need to worry about it. To add an article, I need to be able to, then I should be able to add an article. So we go here and we say, okay, I'm on the blog, and I'm on page this post. And then I should be able to click create a new post. And then I see the current URL. And then I fill out the form. And then this is, I'm in my, in my browser. So this is one thing that we could not do in the PHP browser. This is a JavaScript specific thing. If you go here, I'm going to log in as my admin, just so you can see what we're actually going to do. Kitten, here we go. Sign in. Okay, we're here. We create a new post. Title, summary, content, published at, and then we have these tags. So tags are this fancy JavaScript thing. New. And it creates this tag. Okay, so this is what I was saying. Our PHP browser can't do it. And it's kind of weird. This is kind of a weirdness in our, in Selenium or in a browser in general, and working with JavaScript. Because it's not just something actually needs to happen. Like, we need to do something that triggers. So in this case, we trigger it by, like, I type in Bob. Well, nothing happens. If I click away, see, I clicked here, it didn't actually create a Bob. It didn't create a new tag for us. The only way to create a new tag is either I hit tab, I hit return, that created a new tag, or I do new and then hit a comma, and that creates my tag. So that's how I create a tag here. So I need to actually well, I need to actually do that with Selenium. I need to do the same thing that created the tag here. Selenium can do it because Selenium will work with JavaScript, but your PHP browser will not. So this tag section would not work for the PHP browser. But since we've changed it over to using Selenium, we can. So that's what this fancy, that's what this fancy stuff here is doing. JavaScript adds tags which look for a key press. So we hit test, and then, so we filled field just like normal, we hit test, and then we hit enter. We can either do a comma or hit enter, but we can't just, so we need to use this WebDriver to feel that key press, because that's what it's looking for. It's looking for this key press. So that's what we do. The WebDriver, we hit the enter. And then that should be there. We hit the button create post, and then we go back to the blog homepage. We should be on the blog homepage, and we should see our new test title, article, and our test, IC test with in our post tags. So we make sure our tag was there as well. So should add an article. So we push this here. Okay, and then our last step is we should be able to delete an article. But let's go back and just do this part. This is all I needed to do. So we're going to do our first one. We're going to comment out this scenario, and we're going to run our first scenario. Oh, onDefine method can see in current URL. Okay, call to undefined method. Not here. Current URL, what needed to be installed here? Okay. I don't have a certain package that needs to be set up and didn't tell me which one. So I'm going to do the Codeception. I could find this in my code, but I'm going to do it just like I would if I ran into this issue. I'm going to type it here. Okay. Let's see. There, the helper acceptance. That's what I need. Okay, enabled WebDriver, modules WebDriver. I thought I had that. Let's go back here. Modules, enabled WebDriver. Modules. Config. I set that up. That is. Okay. I'm going into my tests. I set it up here. Wrong one again. Here. Going into tests and acceptance suite. Here it is. I thought I had that one. I guess I did not. There it is. Okay. Because I did not set this up. If you saw here, we enabled the module and then config was separate. You can actually do it this way. You can set the config separate or the config as part of the WebDriver here. So WebDriver, there's my helper. Is it not in app test helper? Oh, it's here. Oh, did I write in the wrong one? I did. Look at that. That's fine. I'll copy it and paste it here. That's where it is. I defined it here versus in my helper. Just going to move that to my helper. Okay, let's try this again. Implement. Generate. Is that not on the helper? This is why I have everything written first, so we must make sure we do it properly. Is that on the table helper? Well, it was here. Use this one I'm gonna need. App test. Does it not? It wasn't complaining about that though. There's my actor. Huh. Oh. Support acceptance tester. Oh, bother. Okay, support acceptance tester. Actor. Yep, put it there. That shouldn't be there. Ah. There it is. There it is. Nope. 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 That was there too. Defined. I know I'm going to have to add that for my WebDriver, but why is the rest of this not working? Let's put this in there while I'm here. So that's what we're going to need for our WebDriver key that we used here. But it's still saying helper acceptance doesn't implement code generated step interface. Okay, so helper acceptance. Use cleanup, but I don't need to do the cleanup if we're not there. Support acceptance, WebDriver. Oh, acceptance test actions. Oh, that's why. Okay. Generate acceptance test actions. Yep. Oh, there we go. Codeception build. That I think is the one I actually need to do. Build to doesn't implement. Yep. What was my other config? What else do I not have configured properly? The bootstrap is what I needed for the files. Tests. Oops, not there. Tests. Acceptance. I don't need bootstrap until I get into my functional testing with my acceptance. Manage article feature. Does this one run? I guess I could double check and make sure that one's running. Everything's running properly. I'll switch over to this one. Oh. Boy. Acceptance suite. Actor. Recorder. I shouldn't need the database yet. App tests, helper acceptance. App test helper acceptance. Okay. Tests. Support. Helper. Acceptance. Just use the cleanup, which is just here. And this says generated step, configured for generated step. Huh. Okay, I'm gonna go, let's see, what can we get to run without that? I can see in URL. I don't actually care about that right now. This should be just an installation, but I'm not. Oops. Helper, okay. What we're doing. Add an article. Return type. Use. Okay, let's try. Let's go here. Oops. Okay, cd into this one. Let's see what I have here. Oh. Okay, and then this is the one I want to serve. We'll try that one, and we'll try to do there. Okay, and now let's try running the test. Oh, look at that. Fast. Of course, my live code example didn't work. Okay, that one I will figure out and track it down for you. I will post notes into what it was that I messed it up here. But okay. Local sites. And Codeception demo. We'll open that one instead. This window. Okay. So from here, our tests. Now we have our acceptance test. Here's our manage articles. Our oh, there was my output, my support, and our acceptance tester. Okay. So as I was showing, we logged in. We are checking to see that we can add the article. We do our WebDriver test, and we see it here. And so now if we went here, it said, yes, manage articles. We could make that work. Great. Admin can delete an article. So manage, admin can delete an article. Admin can add an article. Oh, I wonder if that's why. There we go. Woohoo. Okay, I can add an article. I can delete an article. Okay, so our acceptance tests now are running, and I will look up for what I did wrong and was getting that one error. But we jumped over to the code that was working. And we did our Gherkin's test. So here we have our manage articles, and given I'm logged in as an admin, I've done this in the background. I have a scenario that says as an admin, I can add articles, and then I should be able to add an article. And then scenario 2, also uses the given I'm logged in as an admin, then I should be able to delete an article. And the delete an article should be able to delete an article here. And this one says, given I have in database. So we had to set up the database, which I'll show you. And then it adds I have in database. Well, let me add something to the database and then wait for the element to not be visible. Well, I don't, and I'm on page post and I see delete test. And then I click the button that says delete form. And then on the page post, it contains with this ID is not available. So we got the ID by posting it into the database, and then we can use that to make sure we're on a certain area and we can delete. So I'll show you how this looks with our recording. So I can say this, C, again, we'll do the Alena just to see that it's not on there. And then if I go here, okay, there we go, failure. So now if I go into my recordings today at 5:30, here we go, oops, open, we went here, oops, we were logged in, there we go, log in, we see the post list, we don't see it, let's see, I see that I'm on page post, I click create a new post, I'm on page, oops, did I put it in I should be able to delete an article. Okay. Okay, so I'm on page the blog. I see the element user. I see the post tags. Click send. Why is that? That looks like it's my other one. But why is it saving it? Not. There's my delete an article. Can add an article. Let's try this again. Let's see what we get. It's going to run through and do my things. Failed. Oh, it looks like it's not giving my failures properly. Nope. Not giving my failures properly. Okay, well, I will skip over that part. Okay, this one wasn't set up for my failures proper. I can do that too. I'll double check how that is because that's the code that I want you to be able to actually pull down, the code that works. Okay, so besides being able to see my failures, we now had it working with here we go. I'm going to take this back out. There we go. I'll run that again. Okay. It's running my tests. It's saying I can add an article and I can delete an article. Okay. The thing I wanted to show you from what happened here with the deleted article is I wanted to show you how we added the database. So this is the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'll take any other questions that you have. So in our acceptance test, this is where we add the database. So we say our modules enabled are the database, and this one is a SQLite database, and this is where it's stored. That's what you need. You actually need to have username and password, even though SQLite doesn't need a username and password, but those need to be here. and so they can be blank. But this is really what it is to tell it to use the database. And then in Codeception, enable, oh yes, this is where I needed to add our actor suffix. Or I think something here maybe. Okay, so this is where we add the database so that in our acceptance tester, we can say that we have this in the database first. So being able to work with the database is really helpful because it will let you do just check that, either make sure that something is set in a database, or make sure that when you do something, something happens to your database, or so you can add, update, or or check for something in your database, any of those things that you needed to do. So in data, so you can see here our config, and then our options are fill field. So you can see in database. So what's the table, and then what's the field, and what should you see? Or you can don't see, or have record, or update record. So you can do lots of things like that to help you to be able to interact and set up the database the way that you need. So for example, if you needed to say, I'm logged in as this user with this role turned on or off, you can set that in the database so that you know that you have that, instead of having to set it up separately, or create a bunch of users with different parameters set up. Like, you can actually go in and set it into the database, and that will work just for the tests. So if you've ever worked with a database before, it writes it in like a transaction. So it'll say, hey, while I'm running this test, here are the transactions that need to happen. So it'll interact with the database, would remove it. So anything you do that directly interacts with the database will be gone. Now, anything that you do in a browser is going to stay in your database. So when working with a database, you're going to want to do one of two things, most likely. If you're testing locally and it doesn't really matter, you could leave things in there, which you probably don't, because that's going to make your tests all funky. So you can just do a database cleanup at the end. And that's what we've done here with this cleanup test. So it goes in here and it deletes anything with a title that says test. So I make sure that any test articles I write have test in the title, and then it will be able to delete any added articles for me so that I know that I have a clean test afterwards. So it'll run this cleanup after my test suite. So that's one way to do it. You can also run this on a separate database. You can have a copy of the database that you run your tests on. So setting up a test database versus setting up your local database that is using the test. Okay, so to go over what we've done, we set up a acceptance testing with PHP browser. We took a look at Gherkins. We did not set up our functional tests, but you can be able to see that in the code if you'd like. We did show how to do manage articles, and I did briefly show you the cleanup and how to access the database. And we did get into acceptance testing with Selenium, our standalone, and setting up the recorder. I'm guessing the recorders may not be set up properly in this code that I've shared. So I will go through and make sure that's shared, that is actually working, so that you can grab this code. And then we also showed how we had to use the Selenium to do the tags so that we can hit the enter button. And you can do the wait for element. There's also a perform on that you'll be able to see in the code as well. But we did not get to that yet. So here are some things that you should be able to do. Some tips to make sure we go over. Remember that case is important. So make sure that if you're using the test suite, that you're writing it lower or uppercase, whichever one is necessary. And then if things aren't working like you expected, sometimes using that, I tried the one build, didn't quite work yet, but sometimes, especially if you're using those helper files, doing the Codeception build, it'll regenerate certain files for you. And so that can be really helpful. So those are two things to keep in mind while you're working on your code. And like I said, the rest of the code is here for you at sketchings.com/symphony-codeception-demo. And this is built on the Symphony the Symphony demo framework. That their demo application that you can get up and running. And like I said, here's the extra functional stuff that you'll be able to see here. Extra features, unauthenticated users. Here's a scenario outline. So when we write our Gherkin's test, we can say, hey, I want this test to run multiple ways. I just want to run through viewing each of these. I'm not logged in, and I try to view this page, and I try to view this page, and I try to view this page. All of these should direct me to log in, and all of these pages, I should receive an error. So it's going to run through each of these scenarios, replacing this variable with these examples here. Okay, so this code is open for you here. You can find me on the PHP user group Slack if you have any questions about it. And if anybody has any questions, I can stick around for a little bit and answer any questions you might have.
I'll jump on.
Thank you for joining me, Logan. Oh, I was feeling so alone. It's so hard to present to
I'm here. Thank you for giving the talk. Yep. I was following along a little bit, trying to help you. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was trying to rewinding the video. I'm like, all right, where are we? Like comparing your code, on GitHub.
Yeah. Did I write something wrong? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but I didn't figure it out in time. So yeah.
That's fine. I'll put, like I said, I'll post what I did wrong there, and I'll also figure out that it was nice to see that my that for some reason the errors weren't showing the same way. That recorder wasn't showing the same way in the code that everybody has samples of. So I want to make sure that works, and I will push a new update to that code if I need to, because that should be working as well.
Yeah. It's complicated. Even code that you wrote months ago or whatever. It's like you go back and you're like, wait, what did I do? But yeah.
And most of the time with Codeception, I want people to know, like, just read the error and follow along. It's probably like, hey, you need to install this module or put this there. Most of the time, you can follow the steps pretty well.
Yeah. The examples and the docs look really good. In terms of, like having, I was impressed that they have like different, you can do acceptance, functional unit testing. It's like, you can do any type of testing that you want, right? Like it supports everything. I think that's a pretty cool feature.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a wrapper. So it really does all of your, like, for example, most people have some unit. If you have any sort of testing set up, you probably have unit tests. And because Codeception is just a wrapper around unit tests, you can just move all of your current unit tests in there and it will work. And then you can use more of the Codeception language on top of it. That kind of just makes it a little bit more standard ways of working with all of the different tests. It kind of standardizes on the tests a little bit. Again, to make it a little bit easier for everybody to be able to work on things and communicate.
Have you? I don't know if you've worked with past PHP and how it compares to. It seems like it's a wrapper also a bit over PHP unit. Can you comment at all on like how past compares to Codeception?
No, I can't really give. I haven't really used them in comparison, so I really can't compare them too much. But I would guess most of the things, especially wrap PHP unit. I mean, but that's what modern PHP has given us, and that's why you should be using Composer, is because that's the idea, is that, hey, I don't need to recreate this part of it, but I want to do something that makes it easier in this situation, or to do these things. And that's so many. If you are doing any sort of unit test in PHP, pretty much everything uses PHP unit as an underlying basis. Like, there are other things you can add, and like you can use Mockery, or you can use the built-in mocks on PHP unit. It's, again, it's just like, what pieces do you want to use and implement?
Yep. It is definitely the gold standard. That, you know, we owe a lot. I can't remember his name. The guy that created PHP unit. He had his own little consulting business. I think for a while. It's been a while since I looked into seeing what he's up to, but it's still maintained, and I would assume like everybody's like that. It's still active, right?
Yeah, it's still definitely a maintained project. Yes.
Sebastian.
Sebastian.
Yes.
Yeah, Sebastian's project that he's still definitely involved, and other people help out. But yes, definitely high regard for the work that Sebastian has done on PHP unit. It's definitely a great tool for all PHP developers.
Yep. I feel like most people get started with unit testing and then they like add the other stuff. The front end testing.
Right. I would like to see getting more people involved in coding, starting with testing stuff, because I think testing is such a great way to get into the mindset of coding, and you get these quick wins of like, hey, look, I made my test turn green. And,
right.
Whatever. You can have those things in there already. Those quick wins. And those quick wins are really what, as developers, we want that high of, oh, yay, I made it work, and tests can give you those quick wins to, yes, I made it work. I think it's a good way to get people addicted to coding. So the more ways we can do testing, the better. And that's one of the reasons I liked Gherkins, and I want to show that more, is because it's a great way to start working with non-technical people to help make sure you are testing the right thing. Because I don't know how many times we've done that, but like, the words you said and the words I heard mean different things. And, I make what I think you want, and then you're like, nope, that's not what it is. And so if we can have ways to talk through that more, and it also helps them to think about, okay, well, what if this? So when we're talking, I'm logged in as an admin, and then I do this, given I'm logged in as an admin, when I try to add an article, then I can add an article. So then you can say, okay, well, what happens if I'm not logged in as an admin? Okay, I should get redirected to a login page, or I should see an error page. Like, what should happen. Something needs to happen in those other scenarios. So the scenarios give you a great way to talk about that with non-technical stakeholders and even get them to write some of them. Like, here's my suggestion. Help them to write in those words, even if you don't use that directly. Like, you might have to rewrite it so it matches your function a little bit better. You know, they can say, given I'm an admin. Okay, well, I can either change that code to say, given I'm logged in as an admin, or change my underlying function to accept, given I'm an admin. Either way, I can change that once I get it. But if I as we can talk through that as we're discussing what's the requirements, super helpful. And it's not really it's not too overwhelming for them. It is something, it is just English, just code, given, when, then. We need to be able to talk about this anyway. So those are really a simple way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, like making sure that the subject matter expert can break down the problem is equally as important as the developer. You have to break down the problem to understand it on both sides, I feel like, right? And the Gherkin forces the subject matter expert to, let's break it into smaller steps and like, what is define the goal in terms that we can build. Have you tried taking like a ticket, some sort of requirements, that somebody's written that's not in a BDD like format, and like ask like ChatGPT, like, hey, can you take these requirements and write some Gherkin for me? I wonder if
that could be a really good use of ChatGPT to help with the coding. Just because I think it's that interface between those things, and it may help you figure out what is lacking. Is typically we get caught up in the, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
we make assumptions,
jump to conclusions, right? Yeah,
the jump to conclusions, Matt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking this month. I appreciate it. I'm sure everyone appreciates it. I hope you and everyone has a good Christmas, good holiday. And we'll reconvene next month. Can't believe it's already the new year.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year. And definitely have fun celebrating with your friends and family. And we'll catch y'all on the other side.
Sounds good. All right.